This movie is about a lot of different things that I kind of connected to on parallel levels all at once. Uh, Matt, Damon, and I had been planning on starting a new company. This ended up calling it Artist Equity. That was really designed around rewarding and compensating artists in front of and behind the camera in a different way, and making films differently that would be more conducive to doing the kind of work we wanted to do. And then I got this story, this script about a company that eventually made the decision to change the way it both compensated an athlete, in this case, you know, probably the greatest athlete in modern history, or greatest competitor for at least, uh, and also the way it connected him and his identity to what they were selling. And it was really inspiring. I was concerned because I wanted to make sure that it did justice to the story, because Michael Jordan is such an important cultural figure and so meaningful. The story was about something that I hadn't even anticipated, and it really moved me. It moved me to think of um, being a young person and trying to make your way in the world, being perhaps from a marginalized community, and feeling as though you were taking this giant leap from your high school to college to all of a sudden being thrust in front of the whole world. I thought that young man, all those young men, would have to, and young women, would have to rely on parents that were really meaningful and important. And I thought, no one loves you more than your mother. So I realized that that was really the protagonist of the story, that the hero of this story would be Deloris Jordan, and that she would be emblematic of many, many mothers who have done this kind of work and sacrifice and this kind of dedication. Michael mentioned, he wanted Dolores Jordan to be played by Viola Davis, which is kind of like saying you want to pick Michael Jordan for your basketball team. And so he set out to write a part that would be worthy of Dolores and worthy of Viola. And so both these dreams of mine came true. I got to work with Chris Tucker and Viola Davis, and they came and contributed and invested in this story and brought their voices and knowledge and gifts, and it became a true collaboration where I was really honored to work with the finest, loveliest, most talented people I've ever had the chance to in my life, including my best friend. Nike was the first company to really embrace the notion that the athletes who delivered the value, who represented the meaning and the value that they were mingling with their brand, deserved to be compensated in a way that was commensurate with the value they were delivering. And that was a really meaningful change. This was a time before we kind of took for granted that people could be brands. Brands were, Sears or Kmart or Cheerios. They weren't people. I'm old enough now to see a real difference in between the way that's looked at currently and the way it was when I was a kid. Part that I got really into in the course of making this movie was sneaker culture. I didn't really understand how interesting and how meaningful the construction of shoes had become, and how people really infused their own artistry and humanity and personality, both in the construction of them, the collaboration in them, the way that they paid homage to people to whom they looked up and admired. And I started to really recognize just that as an art form. I wanted to make movies, if I could, that would touch people, that would affect them in some way. It's the beauty of this art form that it transmits as best a feeling. Movies should move us at their best. There's a reason why I love doing this. It should be entertaining. You should like it. You should have fun. You should love going to the movies. I love it. And I wanted to do something that respected that and also played to a whole audience. I think that's reflected in the movie. So I hope you'll get that experience. what I have to offer here is respect and homage and appreciation for Dolores Jordan and women like her, and for her son, who somehow managed to seek and capture that incredibly elusive and rare magical genius that we all are so fascinated by and moved by. And somehow that tells us maybe I can do something that seems too hard for me to do. Or I can deal with a problem that seems overwhelming, or I can accomplish that thing that I dared not dream I could accomplish. And I think that's a really important thing for people to have, something to hold on to, something to look at. And I wanted the movie to feel like that. I wanted to make a story that was hopeful, that moved people. But I wanted to make people feel good and feel as though they could be better and the world could be better and think great things can happen.
I thought this is a really fun, inspiring film. I got a lot of phone calls in this movie. How am I going to do this? And so I immediately started watching all the great film phone call acting I could steal from. Usually, and that was the cool thing about this movie, which I'd never done before, is that my phone acting is with Matt Damon, and normally you would, we'd try to call into each other, the call would drop, someone wasn't available. Often you get the script supervisor reading the lines off camera, but for this film, Matt and I were down the hall from each other. So I had about 3 cameras on me, and he had about 3 cameras on him. And so we were doing it at the same time. We could overlap each other, we could improvise, and Ben could go from room to room, and sometimes we'd come together and say, this is working, this isn't working. So I'd never had an experience like that, which was phenomenal. So I read his book called The Bald Truth, which was very helpful, and I watched a ton of interviews with him and articles about people talking about him. But thankfully the script was beautifully written, and so all his jargon and his negotiations were just so on point that I think anybody that played the role would kind of tap into his essence. What I kind of tapped into is a guy that outworked everyone and would stop at nothing to get to where he wanted to go to. I think the deal was obviously changed the game, but I think David was smart enough to know what he had, and that this could make his entire career, and it did. Ben is a director. There's a lot of compliments. I think every great director knows that actors, all of them, come with a gift, and part of their job is to help let that gift out, and that's exactly what Ben does. He casts it really well, both in front of the camera and behind the camera. He hires people he loves and respects and who he trusts, and he lets them fly. I love the movie. I've seen the movie twice. I'm gonna see it tonight again. I really think it's a really, really fun, funny, and inspiring film. I think the movie really, I have 2 boys who are, one's 13 and one's 14. We talk a lot about self-worth. I think the movie, for me, really deals with that. What is your self-worth? Knowing, what you have and not settling. Like I said, David Falk said, not settling for second best. So I find it to be a very inspiring film. I mean, Viola Davis it's just unbelievable. She's so powerful without trying to be powerful. You never catch her acting, which is annoying. And just a lovely human being. I'm always very shocked that and grateful that I get to do this at all, this acting thing. And then when you get to do it with this kind of cast, with this kind of director, with this kind of crew, you're just you feel incredibly lucky. I felt like that every day on this set, but certainly being around Viola and watching her work was a real highlight.
They mentioned the name Howard White, and I said, "Wait a minute, I think that's my friend, Howard White." And of course, they said Michael Jordan, and I knew that connection was close. So I called him up, and he said, "Yeah, they're doing this movie, and I think I'm in it some kind of way." And I said, "Whoa, man, that's cool." So I talked to him a lot about it, and did a lot of research through him. And I thought that was really cool that I could play a really good friend in the movie and also get a lot of insight from him and his life and his friends. And he really, really took me through his life and helped me out a lot, and had me talk to a lot of people to get stories about him, as from childhood on up to now. So it was a lot of good research. It was a lot of fun. No, I was glad he was still here, that I could talk to him and get a lot of information from him, but no pressure. And he made it really really easy, and I spent a lot of time talking with him, and that really helped. And then learning a lot about, the business and what happened between, Nike and Michael Jordan and the signing of Michael Jordan. And so I had all that insight from him, and it was so much insight he gave me. It was awesome. I was excited about the movie because it had all the things that I loved. It had Michael Jordan, who everybody loves, had basketball, and it had Jordan shoes, and then of course it had my friend. I was playing my friend Howard White. So it had all these fun things, and of course Ben Affleck and Matt Damon, Viola Davis, and Jason Bateman. So many great people that was in the movie that I found out a little bit later. So it got me with Michael and sports and the shoes and all that stuff. It was really had me wanting to do the role. Howard White was a basketball player. Also, he was an All-American in college. Then he went to University of Maryland. He blew out his knee in college and high school, so he had to do something else. And because basketball wasn't fun anymore to him because of the injuries. And then he got a job working for Nike. And then he found himself representing the greatest player that ever lived, for Nike. And he just transformed himself into a whole nother person, from a great athlete to a great mentor and role model, because he couldn't do the things that young guys was doing. He was really keeping them out of trouble and keeping them on the right path. So a lot of things Howard didn't do, and they looked up to him, and I found that out talking to all his friends, about his reputation. A phenomenon, Michael Jordan's phenomenon, in the 80s. This movie's based in, 84, period piece movie, and it changed the world. Michael and his style of basketball was new, and he jumped up in the air and stayed up in the air, and them shoes, everybody wanted to feel what they felt when they saw him play, and the shoes was the closest thing to it when you put it on. Those things are part of American culture, and it's just it's sketched in our minds and in our souls and spirits. So it's a great thing. This movie is a must-see in theaters because it has a lot of nostalgia. You know how much fun it was in the '80s, and especially '84, and what was going on. There was so many innovative people in every field, in every area, and Michael was the rising star in the NBA. You know, he's like I said, he was a phenomenon. He changed the game, the way he played it. He was a one-man show. And you know, even though and he didn't win right away, he had to work hard to get through the Detroit Pistons, to get through the Celtics, the Lakers, and then finally in the '90s, you know, that was like 6 years. It took him to become a champion or something like that, and he become a champion because he worked hard and they built a team around him. But all the while, he was building a legacy and had these shoes on that everybody wanted to buy and be a part of his specialness and his gift, and it became the Jordan brand. Oh, it was great. It was great. I mean, it was great working with Matt and Ben because those guys was like they're like brothers, and they came into my trailer one time and said, "Hey, man, it's like making the movies with friends. You know, we just having fun. You know, if something don't work, we'll figure it out." And I was like, "Perfect. That's the way I work." You know, coming from stand up. And all that. That's the way I work. I always, you know, want to be creative and figure things out and change things if it don't work, and don't do something, you know, if it don't work. So I love the way they work, and I call Ben. He's like a player coach. He's an actor and a director. So he understands actors. He understands how we think sometimes, and how we want to maybe do it a different way sometimes. So it was great, and working with Matt was so much fun. You know, he's such a great guy. I felt really relaxed around him to be able to try out different things, and yeah, it was just a great time. And of course, you know, the all-star cast with Chris, Viola, Jason Bateman, and yeah, it was so many great people in the movies.
For me, my generation, and I would argue for any generation, Michael Jordan was the best at what he did. And there's just a mystique to him. If you are the Michael Jordan of anything, people know what you're talking about. To me, he's the greatest of all time of any sport. And then what he was able to do in this area as well, culturally, for just what it looks like when you're out there playing a pickup basketball game. Everybody's got their Air Jordan gear, and it's I think if you ask them, they all feels that it probably makes them a better player, which is kind of cool. You got a little piece of him on you. The thing that I loved about this plot, this information, is that, you know, obviously the Air Jordan brand, the Nike brand itself, it's so enormous today. What you learn in this film is how small this deal with Michael Jordan started as. I mean, they had $250,000 to spend between 3 different rookies, and the movie starts trying to figure out which 3 players they're going to split this 250 with, divide it up into threes. And Sonny's big, you know, mind-blowing, super controversial idea was to give it all to one guy, this guy Michael Jordan, who wasn't even, you know, number one in anyone's mind at the time. So it's just stunning to me that it started that small, and that it was such a big risk to give all $250,000 to Michael Jordan. And so, you know, it starts from there, and then obviously where it gets to by the end of the film, and the carve out for him to be a participant in profits going forward was just a huge decision at the time. Little did they know. A lot of my scenes were with Matt Damon, and Matt and I are kind of buddies off screen, and we'd never worked together. And so when we were working, Ben yells action, and you look up and you're acting with your buddy, like kind of in the middle of the scene. Always, I would then realize, oh, wait a second, that's Matt Damon right across from me, looking in my eyes. We're acting right now, and it was really exciting for me as a movie fan to be working with Matt Damon for the first time. But then immediately you think, oh no, that's my buddy. Like, we're we hang out, and so there's that going back, which is not uncommon. Fortunately, I get to work with a lot of my friends, and so you got to try to stay focused and not get too starstruck. But it is somewhat distracting because you end up watching him do his thing, which is incredible. He's an effortless actor. You don't see him doing a lot of acting. He's just in it, and he's natural, and it doesn't seem like anything's written, and all of his movements and behavior are all just smooth, and it takes no effort to watch him. You forget you're watching a movie, and certainly forget you're acting in a scene when you're with him. So he makes you a lot better, and he makes you really comfortable. And he's just such a good guy. So I loved it. I wish I was in every scene with him in the film. The character that I play, Rob, I believe he is Matt Damon's character's boss. And so there's a power dynamic there. And Matt's character, Sonny, wants to kind of, do something a little risky, which is give all the money to Michael Jordan instead of splitting it up between three. And my character's saying, no. You stay in your lane, be disciplined, and then ultimately, obviously, Matt's character goes rogue, and he goes over my head, goes over the big boss's head, Phil Knight's, and so there's this fun sort of tension between my character and his, and then ultimately there's the realization that, oh, Sonny really did the smart thing. He did the right thing. And my character, you see, he's sort of proud of him and kind of happy for him. And you can kind of see the friendship there being more important than the established power dynamics there. And that he's kind of ends up rooting for his subordinate in his rogue effort, and he sees that it's probably going to yield some fruit. And so that's kind of a nice, pleasant, kind of happy ending to their tense relationship, because they argue a little bit in the film. Ben Affleck is just an incredible director, and he so clearly loves doing that job. I mean, he really enjoys acting as well, and he's incredible at that, but there are certain directors where you can tell they really understand what that position can and should be as far as leadership potential, the privilege of leading, the privilege of having a plan and unapologetically executing that, leading that, providing encouragement and momentum for the crew that is obligated to follow you. So you should have a good plan, and he does, and he knows what he wants, and he's got a very fun and pleasant way in which to communicate that to everybody, and that plan happens to be a really good one, and it's super tasteful, and it's super entertaining, and always a great combination between movie and film. He's just been on a ton of sets for a long, long time and has clearly absorbed everything. The wardrobe was fun to wear. It's not flattering. No one's going to be pleased with my silhouette in this film. Baggy pants, baggy shirt, big fat face and fat hair. The definition of glamour back then was different than it is today, and so no one wanted to exercise any real vanity in this movie. It was sort of the beauty of that day could be deemed ugly today, and that was kind of fun. To everyone is on the same page and wearing these ugly suits and shirts and silly hair. I love the movie. It doesn't have, this isn't a Marvel or DC movie. You know, we don't have effects and explosions and jokes and stunts and big action sequence. This is a story about a business deal. And so I wasn't prepared for it to be as engaging and compelling. You know, it's hard to keep someone's attention when all you're talking about is a business deal. But Ben did it, and Matt did it with his performance, the direction, the script, the pacing of the editing, the music that's throughout it. Like, it's really fun, and it's super fast. And it is a story about an event that everybody knows about, but they don't know the details of it. So you find yourself constantly going, wow, that's how that happened, and that's what that discussion was, and that's how cavalier they were about something that has ended up being an incredibly big thing in our global culture.
I thought it was like fabulous. I mean, it was, you know, some scripts you read, some scripts and they're just kind of mediocre or whatever, but this one was really, really great. And so to have the opportunity to do this with Ben and Matt and the team and then my wife, it was just like kind of a no-brainer. What he saw in Sonny was that unrelenting drive to get to sign our son. And he wanted that for Michael. I mean, even though the mother might have had some consternation around those things, because she was really kind of being super protective and super kind of like, I'm not sure, he really doesn't want to do this. But I think James saw something in Sonny that he felt like was special. You know, sometimes as people come around sometimes, and they're just special folks. And there's an authenticity and there was a genuineness in Sonny that I think James saw. And he wanted that for his son. And so that was how he was able to kind of like just kind of stay in there and kind of love on Sonny. And I think maybe Deloris picked up some of that, and then it happened. This is unprecedented. I mean, listen, all Michael wanted was, you know, he wanted a Mercedes, I think a drop-top Mercedes, and the $250,000, and it's like, I'm good. Because he's a kid, he's coming out of school, it's the first time you're drafted. All of a sudden, this happens. And so what the Jordans were able to do was to harness that, because they realized that this was something that had never been done before. And to be able to be that focused and to believe that much in our son meant a whole lot to them, I'm sure. And they knew that it would mean a lot to other families who had sons who had the same potential to maybe do the same thing for their sons. So culturally, it just like made people's eyes really open up to the fact that if you really believe in your kid, and you believe in his vision, and then you have a vision for how you think his life could be, then you're going to go for it. And then it's going to affect everything around it. And it did. This was 8 days. I've been around a long time. And you know, it's not often that you get on a set where you work with a director and a crew and actors, you know, that are of this caliber and have this much care and this much love. And it was easy. It was easy and it was fun. And, you know, a lot of times you work on these things and sometimes they're memorable, sometimes they're not. But this was really, really memorable. And Ben and Matt were just like A+. You know what I mean? And then everybody around them was the same. So it was a very happy, loving, wonderful set, very nurturing, very open. It was really cool. I had a great time doing it, so it was a lot of fun. That soundtrack, when I went to see the film and they had put all the music in there, it took me all the way back. looking at the way people dress, which was, listen, I'm from Austin, and I remember when Austin used to just be Little Austin. Now it's turned into this thing. But in our film, it was just so cool because it took you back to that time. I was in school, I was in high school back then. You know what I mean? So it was kind of, the soundtrack was the soundtrack of my life. A lot of the clothes were familiar to what I saw people wearing. A lot of the behaviors and the attitudes were what you were seeing. So I think in this film, you have a depiction of all those things. And that's what makes it so, so beautiful. And that's what's going to resonate with people when they see this film.
Not only did I love Jordan, but I loved his sneakers. And I own 1,500 pairs of sneakers, 1,100 of them are Jordans. And so when they said, you're gonna have us, even I didn't care if it was an extra role in this movie. I could have just walked by. One scene is plenty, but if it was extra role, I'd have been happy. I'd just been in the background, like, holding a pair of sneakers. So I was excited to be a part of it, and the history of the shoe, the icon, the brand, like how, it's like the origin story. So the shoe, I look like at it like it's a superhero, and this is his origin story. I really think it's about follow your instincts, follow your dreams, bet on yourself, and take chances and take risks. And if you feel something in your gut, go for it. This success is a lot of instinct and a gut feeling, and it's a lot of determination. And no matter what, you gotta find a way to make it happen. I just think that he cares about everything that's in the frame and on the screen, and especially his actors. He pulls such wonderful performances from his actors because he lets you go, and he lets you bring you to the role and the writer in you to the role, and he uses your skill set, and he makes you feel comfortable. He gives you like direction, like as an actor, from an actor's point of view, and you get what he's saying as an actor. I had fun working with Matt. I mean, I instantly felt comfortable. I just think it was a warm, welcoming environment, and it felt like I knew those guys for years, and I had just met them on the set. It was a great experience, and I think him and Matt have such a great shorthand. But it was a really great time. I think anybody that walks on one of their sets will feel comfortable and feel good coming to work every day. I think Michael Jordan's influential because as great as Michael Jordan was, he was always humble enough to try to be better. I think when you have a skill set and you are excellent in that area, like Michael Jordan was a great dunker, and then he became a great shooter. And then like they would double team him. And so he developed this fadeaway jump shot that was just unstoppable. That's somebody who is an unstoppable force of nature. And myself as an actor, writer, producer, now comedian, I pattern myself after that kind of greatness because you want to be an unstoppable force of nature. And that takes a lot of practice and a lot of humility and the will and determination to just keep getting better.
We both really responded to Alex Convery's script the first time we read it and just thought it was such an interesting story. Having lived through it and experienced it as a kind of a teenager when Michael Jordan came onto the scene and really kind of changed the world as we knew it in terms of, the NBA and the culture, and just suddenly there was this whole shoe culture that appeared, and we didn't really know the backstory, and there were so many things in there that I thought were interesting and that surprised me when I read the script, and I think will surprise people when they see the movie, like where Nike was versus where they are today. And I just always found it was one of those scripts that anytime I picked it up, I would just sit for an hour and a half and read the whole thing. So that's always a good sign when you have a piece of material like that. And then we decided pretty quickly that it was something we wanted to do, and it would be a good a movie to do together. We'd never worked together as a director and actor, and it was clear pretty quickly that this should be the one to do it on. I didn't know much about Sonny. I mean, there was a pretty good documentary about him, and through researching to play him and talking to him, I think what we really wanted to try to capture was the spirit of those guys then, and that culture that at Nike, and what they were trying to do. And they all look back really fondly at this time in their lives. And when you're a kind of an outsider and a revolutionary a little bit and a renegade, and what they did turned out to be so consequential and kind of incredible. Hearing that, from his wife that it looked like we raided his closet, to to talking to him about, obviously we're taking liberties, right? This is dialogue we're writing a lot of the time, so it's not exactly what somebody said, but the spirit of what was happening and what the dynamics were, and that's really what we wanted to get right, and that was really what we were tasked with doing. So, the arguments with David Falk, like the agent, like Sonny was there that day, they didn't exactly happen like that, but the idea that when one person gets quieter, the other person gets louder is something that I think we can all relate to, and the dynamic in their relationship I think is really fun, and something he definitely responded to as he was watching it. I don't think it's possible to kind of overstate what it means to American culture. I mean, that's one of the things the movie tries to do, is show you what things looked like before Michael Jordan came along, because it's just completely changed everything. It's changed the way we think about brands in general. Like right now, it's everybody's on Instagram thinking that this is my brand. It's like very, it's common for people to think of things that way, and it wasn't the case at all back then. And so it really was revolutionary what they did. And it required somebody who was, a once in a number of generations, I would say, kind of iconic talent. You couldn't overstate the impact that Michael had on our culture, how everybody wanted to be him. When you went to the park, like everybody was Jordan. Everybody wanted to be that guy. They created a market, and he created a market because of his unique kind of greatness and genius. Because it became aspirational. Everybody just wished they were him. So what we decided to do was tell the story of everybody around him. And particularly because when Ben spoke to Michael about it, what Ben came away from that conversation with, among other things, but above all, was the impact that Michael felt his mother had on him and on the deal and on this moment in his life, and how important she was. And so that really became the thrust of the movie for us. This experience has really been the most joyful of my career. And I think it's just because we're older now, and I think we probably have a lot of more perspective and a little more wisdom, hopefully. I think, we've lost people in our lives at this point. Like we know that we're not young and going like, this is going to go on forever. We're I think feeling really grateful to go to work every day, and to love what we do this much, to love each other that much, and to get to go work together. I mean, it's just an absolute dream. One thing about having a best friend for 40-something years is that you really have a common frame of reference, and you have taste that is in line with one another. And so you don't, if ever we disagree about something creatively, one or the other of us is totally willing to try the other's idea because, you know, if you feel that strongly about it, I'm probably wrong. You know, and there's just that level of trust at this point, and it just makes work really, really fun. To have Viola Davis, first of all, I mean, you know, Michael. One of the other things that Michael said to Ben when they met was that he wanted Viola Davis to play his mom, and that's like saying, you know, I'm starting a basketball team and I have to have Michael Jordan. You know, she's an American treasure. Like we got to write a part now, and we made a deal on that phone call, Ben and I, that we don't do the movie unless Viola does the movie, and so that's when we just rolled up our sleeves and went, okay, let's write the best role that we can, and then show it to her, and then invite her in. She's an American treasure because she's just brilliant. Like these moments of brilliance just kind of drip off of her, and so we were very lucky to have Viola and to have Chris Tucker, who came in and really built that part. Knows Howard, is a friend of Howard's, and so spent time and like really came with this full idea, you know, all of the full character, but all of these different ideas. And we shot so much stuff where Chris just would riff and would just be, and I would just throw questions at him and he would just be Howard. And so we really benefited from actors who are filmmakers. You know, Chris Tucker is a writer because he's a stand-up. He's used to generating material. Viola and Julius are A-list producers on top of being great actors. So it's like you're inviting other filmmakers in to come and not just stay in a narrow lane as an actor, but to help you write and to help you build. And that's what we had, and that's why I think the movie works as well as it does. I really like the writing and the acting. I really do. I feel like everybody, I mean, leaving myself out of it, just the performances are great. And, you know, Jason is great. Ben is great. Viola, obviously, I mean, is great. And Chris, and Matt Maher, and Chris Messina. Like, everybody shows up and really brings something wonderful. And so I feel like it's a story people are interested in, and it's the kind of movie Ben and I grew up loving, right? It's you know, it's not a ton of explosions. It's not, but it's just really good writing and really good acting and a story that you care about and people that you end up caring about, and that's a reason to go to the movies.
The first reaction was just like how funny it was and how specific. It reminded me, obviously, of like Moneyball and Jerry Maguire, these movies that I love so much. Even though I'm not necessarily much of a sports fan, there's something about the specificity of the world of professional sports and the humor that comes out of it. But I also thought of like Bull Durham, some of these great like 80s sports movies that were made during this era. And I also just thought a lot of being young in 1984 and when all that was happening and the time. At least how he's portrayed in the movie and the sense I got of him from reading about him is that he was just like a worker, a problem solver. You know, the genius was there, but the way it applied itself was just in like just thinking about the task at hand and how best to do it. I found there was a lot in the script, in his sort of down-to-earthness, but also his interesting pretensions that I really connected to. The Peter Morgan script is comfortable in his work, and he's not interested in whether or not Nike's going to make it or the business dealings or how much money is going to be made. He's like he's got this obsession that he can't explain with like basketball shoes and how they work and how they look. And he's found a job where they encourage that obsession, and he's just going to like let it go. He was so well organized. He had such a clear idea of what he wanted. And that the only thing, and with all the scenes, he was like very specific. And again, the costume design and the other actors were so good and the script was great. And the only thing that wasn't figured out was like what I wanted to do with the lines and in what I could bring to it, just what I could bring in. Anytime I thought about anything else, it was like, that's so taken care of. And within that little lane that I had, he gives me so much freedom to do whatever I want. He's just like interested in what I do and what everybody's doing. And when he sees something he likes, particularly, he draws it out. But it's a great working environment. It was the first time I had acted with Matt, and it just felt really easy. It's that ease. We could make each other laugh off camera. We could try different things. It was just very relaxed and collaborative. And I never met Jason, but Jason is just like the least pretentious. I'm a huge fan of everything Jason's done, and he's just such a down-to-earth guy and so unpretentious, and so they both are. There's no sense that you're like in there with these like big iconic stars, but they're just like, again, they're just regular people here to just sort of like, no, let's figure this out. I would describe the film as funny and heartwarming. And I really think, like, more than anything, it is welcoming. I think that it wants to, more than a lot of movies I've seen, wants to connect with the viewers. Like, wants to connect with a sense of nostalgia for that time and to connect with their love of, like, the things that they love. The enthusiasm and the love for it is infectious.
For me, it's a story about dreaming and dreams. And I have a very close personal relationship with dreams. Because dreams are just, I'll tell you, no matter what your circumstances are in life, no matter what you were born into, your dreams are the tools that keep you alive. And I'm always interested in people who have the most outrageous dreams, who really think outside of the box, and they go for it, and it lands. You know, I compare that to magic, you know, those beautiful sort of magic mysteries in life that just it inspires me. I always want to be reminded that it's possible. I see her as someone who moves through life at a different speed than everybody else. You could see people running into walls, maybe tripping over themselves, maybe doubting their purpose and their vision and their decisions. And I see Deloris walking that straight Zen path of understanding exactly who she is, exactly what her purpose is. It's one of those people who absolutely is present in their skin. I think one of the videos I saw was of her talking to someone in an interview about the importance of education. She wasn't trying to speak fast. She wasn't even trying so hard to even make the person understand them, because you could tell she was like, you're gonna understand me. And I'm speaking from a place of honesty and truth, and I'm gonna reach you, and you could turn that camera off. Even after you turn the camera off, I'm gonna continue to talk. She plays by her own rules. When we meet Deloris in the story, Sonny has come to the house, which he was not supposed to do. It's unorthodox. It's not standard practice, but he comes to the house as a sort of method to get the kind of deal he wants. It's the perfect scene to introduce Deloris, because what happens is she absolutely does not trust him, but then he does something, and there's something about it. Sometimes you get an intuition that she's gonna allow him in, and at least allow some space in her brain to open herself up to what he has to say based on the fact that she believes he's coming from a point of honesty and bravery. And I think she says it at one point too. She says, I love that you love your family and that you came here with a purpose. And I mean, I like that. So you get an insight into her character in that small scene. Ben's directing style is badass. I mean, I just feel like that was the biggest surprise. And I love all of Ben Affleck's movies. I do. I think he's a terrific director. And me, my makeup artist, my hairstylist, my husband, that's all we talk about now. That this was one of the greatest experiences of our lives. We work together a lot, all of us, because he only works with people that you could tell he feels a connection with. And they're all kind people, as well as interesting people and great actors, but you could tell that they're a part of a family. That's important, because when you're connected to someone, you don't have to spend too much time making yourself known. He's an auteur, meaning he has control over his voice. He knows exactly what he wants to say. He knows exactly how he wants to say it. Ben trusts your choices, and he celebrates them after a take. He goes nuts. He's your biggest cheerleader, which feeds your ego, and it makes you want to do better. Michael Jordan did request that I play his mom. And at first, in the past, I was always so offended by that. And then I went to Africa. And I found out that mother is actually a very, probably the deepest honor you can give to someone, because they would all call me mother. So it's deeply honoring. I'm deeply honored to play his mom, and especially when I see the kind of woman that she is, which is something that strikes me as very, very, very unique. So I'm flattered that someone like Michael Jordan would see me as someone like that. First of all, they're gonna have a hell of a ride. It is a fun ride, and it's fun in its purity. The story alone is a hell of a ride. Just the whole idea of dreaming the biggest dream you could possibly imagine and it landing. And I think that's the part of the story that's gonna blow people away. That even as it's unfolding, even though you know the end of it, you're like, how the hell is this gonna work out?